Welcome to the Cyber Business Podcast, where we feature top founders and entrepreneurs and share their inspiring stories. Now, let's get started with the show.
Matthew Connor here, host of the Cyber Business Podcast, where we feature successful business leaders, authors, top law firms, green energy companies, and more. I hope you're ready for another great episode of our CIO series, because today we're joined by a man who's made his way from support technician all the way to being the CIO of a publicly traded company, Christos Ruci. Christos, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being on. Before we get too far in, a quick word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by cyberlinks.com. That's cyberlynx.com. Do you know if a hacker's in your system? Most people and most companies don't until it's too late and a hacker's already done damage. A hacker's job is to bypass your security, so companies need a way of knowing when someone's gotten past their security. That's where CyberLink's intrusion detection comes in. With our 24/7 security operations center, we use a combination of AI and cybersecurity technicians to see when a hacker has successfully bypassed your security. So if a bad guy gets past your security, we'll know right away and be able to kick them out. Find out more at cyberlinks.com. That's cyberlynx.com. And now back to our show. Christos, for those who aren't familiar, can you tell us about Limbach and your role there as CIO?
Absolutely. Thanks, Matt. Christos Ruci here with Limbach CIO. I've been with the company for years. Limbach is a building solution provider. So we do a lot of HVAC, mechanical, plumbing work for business owners, and we really focus more on critical systems. So you think of buildings, hospitals, universities, data centers, really where the heating and cooling is critical for the uptime and operations. We were founded in 1901, so we've been around quite a while. We are a public company. We've gone through a bunch of different divisions. We were with Enron at one point in time. We went, of course, we were removed ourselves prior to that change there, but we really have led in innovation. And because the innovation of the construction business has changed for so long, as has our business models, as have our IT needs. With that comes years of legacy, infrastructure, and you name it, of course. So really my role with the company is to oversee internal IT, external IT, as we do have product offerings for our customers, leveraging data and technologies to better optimize their buildings. That all falls under my umbrella within technology. I also oversee our cybersecurity program, data and reporting, all of our business applications, and our integration and development teams.
Nice. That's a lot of hats for one head. So I think that's really interesting. You mentioned the kind of the mission critical or critical infrastructure. For me, being on the cybersecurity side of things, and also kind of being an entrepreneur and founder, in the business realm, I think that's a really interesting space. When you talk about the security side of what is already that critical infrastructure in a building, keeping the generator. I mean, look at a hospital, right? If something's wrong with the power or the HVAC, things stop, right? Life is on the line. So how do you guys, that's got to be, is that kind of stressful on your end in terms of kind of the IT aspect of that and the cybersecurity aspect?
It is. So yes, you're absolutely right. I have to look at security not just from an internal standpoint, keeping my users and infrastructure safe, but also our customers. While they have their dedicated cyber folks, their dedicated cyber protocols, I have engineers who are connecting to those systems and they're updating software, firmware, controls, you name it. So there has to be those protocols on both sides in terms of keeping each other safe. And I say the word each other because it can be two-way, as we know. We have to keep them safe. They have to keep us safe as well. So we have to have all those protocols in place. OT, is becoming more and more in the radar for cyber attacks. So that is definitely something we look at. And as we leverage all the different OEMs from a control systems, we have to make sure we understand their limitations, but also put our own security wrappers around anything that we deliver to our customers.
Yeah, I mean that's a lot to handle. So let me ask you, obviously, at this size, you've got, a great team. Now, as the CIO, kind of dealing with all of those different areas, with when it comes to that putting in the right leadership team, have you found that challenging? Or is that something where you guys have just been really lucky? Is it, any lessons or, tips to share?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I've been lucky. I think it's been a challenge as it is for everyone else. And the reason being is there's tech, there's business, and it's tough sometimes to combine those two.
Yeah.
So what I really have done over the past 4 years is find a team that is business focus first, technology second. And I think once I have that mindset in place as a culture within IT, we're able to look at what problem are we solving first, and then, okay, how do we solution second? And I think that has been the biggest struggle. And one of the reasons I love my role is because I do have a business background. So I'm able to, really understand is it we're doing rather than technology being just a cost center and technology being just an order taker. And I think that has been the biggest challenge on getting the right leaders in place to bring that message down to our team.
Yeah. Well, I like that you kind of went, if you will, from all the way from the IT mailroom, right? At the that kind of frontline tech support, all the way to the C-suite. So you really have kind of made your way all the way up through, including getting to work tech sales. And I
Yeah.
think I think that's kind of invaluable when it comes to, that level of leadership, being able to understand what it's like on the ground with the troops in the trenches on the tech support side, and then the same when it comes to sales. I mean, that's a big deal as well, understanding how difficult and challenging it is to get new customers, let alone keep customers, and all of that goes into it. And then you get up to the leadership position, and it's now managing all of this and configuring everybody and keeping everybody happy and productive. That's we get a lot of CIOs who've had varying I guess, backgrounds. But yours, I think, is so. I don't want to say it's so perfect, it kind of in a way from that kind of mailroom to CIO, that I think that's a really great kind of example for a lot of people coming up through the ranks. Because I think you get into tech and you kind a lot of people get stuck,
Yeah.
and at the tech support level or the engineer level, and I think that there's a hard time getting past that, and for a lot of people. So what is there a key to your success there? How you kind of did that, or was it just because you didn't stay in one company, you took that into your own hands, your career into your own hands there?
I guess it was organic, and it wasn't by design. When you say, I started in the mailroom, I literally worked as customer support for America Online. That was my
Love it.
first real tech job, right? So I talked to some of the folks on my team, and I talk about that squeaking sound, the squealing sound of a modem, and they have no idea what that is, right? So I talk, I always say that you've got mail, and I talk through where I started, and something in my brain always led myself towards business strategy and operations. I didn't know it at the time, of course. But I think what happened was in my first, after America Online, I worked for a Medicare HMO organization for about 7 years. And I started as network administrator, went down the IT path, and I just learned that this is great, but I wanted more. And my brain was being challenged for something different. Now, I stayed with that organization for 7 years and moved from network administrator all the way to a director of operations. But it was after a few years that the president and CEO of the company, he was a doctor, he said, Christos, he says, you're not a typical IT person. He said, if you can just figure out how to learn the why, you're going to change your whole career and you're going to be able to really make technology more impactful than just, the guy behind the curtain. So after that, I kind of shifted how I dealt with the business, how I try to understand operations first, and really try to translate that between business and tech. And from there, my whole career just changed. I went more towards software development, more towards business operations. Then, of course, as you mentioned, as a Microsoft partner, selling solutions to business owners. So it really went from a pure technical standpoint to a and standpoint, business and technology.
I love that. Now, going back to what that the leader of that HMO said to you, that understanding the why. Let's dive into that a little bit more because that sounds very interesting.
Yeah, so
What exactly did he mean there?
at that point in time, I was the network administrator. I was running the help desk. I was typical guy behind the curtain that everyone yelled at because their computer didn't work. I think we all know that, unfortunately.
Been there,
Uh,
right?
it's the thankless job of IT sometimes.
Right.
I started moving more towards managing the software development teams. And that is when, at that time, we were building a claims adjudication system. We were building a customer service module. We were building a provider relations module, all the different pieces of a Medicare, of an HMO company. And I was wrong. Everything I was trying to do was just wrong because I didn't understand the business. And that is where he said, you have to understand claims. I actually sat there and I adjudicated a claim with support, of course. But I actually sat there in the trenches and learned the operations so that then I can translate that into tech speak for our developers and our BAs. And I think that is where it clicked. It was successful. It was a great application. It had its quirks, of course, but the users were pleased. And when I started seeing that gratitude and that change in the user perception of not just myself, but technology, that's where I think it all kind of came together.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really big point. And I think at any level, even kind of getting the the lowest level employees, right, on the ground, understanding the mission of the organization, why they're doing it. I think that's well, I think for one, people spend so much time at work, right? You're spending 8 hours, a day, hopefully, at work. And if it's just to get money, and I think this is where a lot of people, especially the younger generation, perhaps, kind of they see it as, well, this I'm just exchanging time for money. Okay, true. At the very, at the most basic level, you are. However, if in doing so there's a mission and you're making the world a better place, even if it's just, I mean, like for you guys, that's an easy one. You're right. You've got you've got this critical infrastructure. That's so easy to say, we're keeping the people alive, right? Even when you could be making, I don't know, rubber gloves for hospitals. You're keeping people alive, right? And so, and I love that on the cyber side, we're defending, businesses from enemies. And so you're doing all of these things and more, right? You're defending your company, your employees, your partner companies, your customers, all of these people, their way of life and everything. If that goes away, how many people suffer because you didn't defend them properly, right? And so I think having that mission, that why, is so important, and it doesn't get communicated, I think, often enough by managers. They're busy managing and not really leading in that way. So I don't know. What do you think?
No, I agree. It's difficult because you're asked to be the subject matter expert technically on certain things, but at the same time, none of that matters if you don't really understand the vision behind it and the strategy. So it's having that happy balance. At what point do you allow the rest of the team to take on the technical pieces and trust and verify while you take on the visionary pieces? And at the same time, where do you jump back in on the technical side because maybe things can be better and it can be more efficient? It's that happy balance that is continuous and it's a struggle, especially with varying sizes companies. Our company is fairly, we're decent size, but we don't have unlimited resources in the tech department. So it's finding that happy balance to, risk versus the reward.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you. So, we've had a lot of guests on, and I think a lot of people struggle with that sort of the budgeting aspect of, security, especially because it's not a revenue generator, right? It's a defensive play, unlike insurance, where you can be like, oh, look, if we lose, this is, it's insurance. It's a financial, backstop for us. Great. If we get hit, we've got this. But the preventative, the defense, have you found it challenging to communicate that and get support on that side? Or was that easy even prior to COVID?
Yeah. So I joined the company right during COVID. I was probably the only person, I know there's others, but that joined a new company in November of 2020. So in the midst of everything, I remember traveling to Pittsburgh at the time to meet some of the folks, wearing the face mask, and the whole city was shut down. So I was right there in the thick of COVID. Limbaugh, prior to my arrival, really didn't have a robust security program. It was important, but no one was really leading that initiative. So the budget was null. Not because no one thought it was important, but because no one organized it in a manner to show what was needed. So what we did right away, or what I did, was I did a tabletop exercise with our executives.
Nice.
And it was and I remember the CEO at the time, who, he's retired since, and our COO is now our CEO. He said, "Hey, why is there a 4-hour meeting on the calendar with no description?" He goes, "Do I have to attend?" I said, "Yes,
Yes.
but I'm not giving you anything of what's going on."
Nice.
So we did have a 4-hour meeting with every C-level executive, and we went through a scenario, or a few scenarios, that really, let's just say, scared the crap out of our leadership team, but also it showed, wow, we really don't have a plan. So that really spearheaded getting funding, putting together a robust 3-year framework or 3-year budget to put a security program in place. At the same time, getting the we did the same type of exercise, very limited, to our board, in order for the board to have the same kind of reaction, and it worked. So
That's
I
brilliant.
yeah, so I think I'm very fortunate, and speaking to my peers, it's not always the case, unfortunately, but I was very fortunate to get instant buy-in and support in putting together what would be, in my mind, a pretty robust security program,
Mhm.
um, without knowing that the SEC was going to soon put some regulations in place where I had no choice anyhow. Luckily, we were ahead of that by a few years before
Yeah.
the SEC did what they did.
That's fantastic. Now, let me ask you, I think that's just such a great use of a of an exercise that is it's recommended, it's required by a lot of, compliant, depending on the compliance, and it's something that I think goes undervalued, right? It's kind of an unsung hero. So I'm kind of curious, have since kind of telling this story to others and advising them, have others had similar success, or did they still, after the tabletop exercise, still struggle to get the budget?
So the good news is my CEO at the time was part of another construction roundtable or user group, and had me as kind of pitch the same tabletop with them, and then they did it within their organization. So, I always try to give back to the community. I try to share my experiences, right or wrong. And I'm always learning. I'm also, I have a few years left in my career, so I have some more growing to do as well, but it's important for me to really give back. And in this case, most of those individuals understood, and I was talking to other CEOs.
Yeah.
It wasn't me talking to other IT folks, it was
Nice.
business wise. And I think most adopted a tabletop. One actually had me come in and conduct the tabletop exercise for their IT team and business. So most do. I do hear rumbling still that budgeting. It's there's always something better to spend the money on. However, I think nowadays, with all that's been going on in the cyber news, I don't see how that's possible. And I think that the
Right.
days of, saying no to a security budget is probably no more.
Yeah. Well, you talked about giving back. You're also part of the let me make sure I get this right, the Central Florida CIO, right?
I am. So there's a national organization called Inspire CIO. And the goal of this organization is not just another vendor-driven organization that's funded by vendors that try to sell CIOs on products. It's actually for CIOs led by CIOs. And there's no vendors at our meetings, at our events. It is
Nice.
more so just the CIO. So I put together the agenda, or my team, we put together the agenda. We do have underwriters and some vendors, but they're brought in by a CIO. You have to have a CIO advocate to be a sponsor of this organization. And what that does is, so we have three chapters here in Florida. As mentioned, it's national, so there's, I believe, 50. I forget the exact number of chapters. So in Florida, we have North Florida CIO, Central Florida CIO, and South Florida CIO. Because, the proximity of Florida being elongated, the distance is kind of far for someone in Jacksonville to go to an event in Miami.
Yeah,
We decided to split that up, but more so because the chapter is growing. So,
that's
I
great.
am currently the vice chair of Central Florida CIO and really try and spearhead getting more talented CIOs into our chapter, but also make sure we have engaging topics. So we do lunch and learns, we have strategy meetings, we have in-person meetings. We have a Slack channel that's national. So anytime I have a question, I can go to our Slack channel of CIOs and say, has anyone done this? Or has anyone done that? And I've used that multiple times when working on RFPs or, looking at a product. So, it's important to continuously collaborate with other peers in the industry.
That's great. No, because you often find in those organizations they are really vendor kind
Yeah.
of backed, driven, sponsored, and it just becomes everything is just kind of vendors fishing for pros. And that you don't blame them. I get it. Everybody's got to eat and make money, and if it's a great product, fine. But it takes away from the informational aspect and the networking aspect. I love that you guys have made that the priority. And then if
Yeah.
one of the members is like, hey, look, this is a great product, just wanted to introduce it.
Yeah.
Fantastic. That's great.
Yeah.
I think that's brilliant. I mean, there needs to be more of that out there.
Agreed. And it's ironic because, as mentioned, I worked for a Microsoft partner consultancy for 7 years and I was a seller myself. So here I am saying, I'm part of an organization that doesn't focus on vendors, and I was one. So I do understand the best of both sides. I think that is why at Limbaugh I have a partner-driven approach. I have a lot of partners. And sometimes it's good to bring in the right subject matter experts to support you rather than hiring and managing, talent
Yeah.
only in-house. My goal is to have the experts train and upskill my internal folks, but then I also have that surge bench as needed as things occur or we need more talent.
Yeah. Well, I think that's really interesting because like on our side, like on with Cyberlinks, we started out as a small MSP in Central Virginia, and it was kind of fun to grow from that to now kind of a nationwide, cybersecurity, provider. And I think for me it was interesting having always focused on small business. It was great because we were always dealing with kind of the client, this really, small business that cared. You're providing basically all of their, IT, all of their cybersecurity. And then we've now finally gotten to where we are now, looking at much larger businesses. And it surprised me that so many, still valued that, external kind of expertise instead of trying to hire it, bring it in-house and have it. Sure, you can afford to do it and it's doable, but at what cost? And does it even make sense a lot of times when you could just have that outside support when needed?
Yeah, especially with cyber. Going back to, the topic here, back to cyber, it's a lot of folks have not been through it.
Yeah.
Going through an incident, a potential event, or even an event, um, is difficult. It's taxing, um, to everyone involved. It's also, you have to have that sense of calm while going through it. And you really have to have that proper incident response plan in place to know, what do I do? Because at that point in time, when something is happening, your brain goes elsewhere, right? The human nature of emotions begin. It's not only you trying to figure things out, but you have every executive calling you. So, having that proper plan in place really, really helps, and allows you to have a scripted approach, a methodical approach on what to do next, having the right forensic partners if needed, having the right, team to come in and support you is critical. And many folks never get to that because they didn't have that tabletop exercise. They didn't have who is the right committee. The CEO can't be the decision maker only on everything. So it's having that right plan in place ahead of time, hoping that you never use it. But I think
Mhm.
nowadays we're at it's not if, it's when.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the days of being fully protected is not there. It's how resilient can you be?
Yeah.
And we follow the NIST framework, and we really look at the benchmark across all pillars evenly. Not one pillar is better than the other, but I think you're starting to see more focus on resiliency than you are just, identify and protect. So I think it's understanding that, and it goes back to understanding the business. What are we willing to lose? Where can the operations fail? Um, Usually everyone says none, but there is a ranking order of operations and business continuity that has to be thought through. I think putting all the technical pieces aside, and this is where I go back to the business approach, how are we helping the business if something was to occur? How are we getting things back in order? And I think if we start there and then you throw in multi-factor authentication, throw in a SOC, throw in all these things that support you, that's second. Again, business first, technology second. And I've kept that with my cyber program as well.
That's fantastic. I mean, I think that that is just spot on, and I think you've given us so many great kind of nuggets of wisdom, and I love how that that tabletop exercise, it is just so valuable, and it's an unsung hero, I think, in today's business world, in the cyber world. It really does help bring people who have little to nothing to do with cyber and IT, brings them and gives them the experience of, hey, this happened, now what? And I think it's very eye-opening. So I love that that's played such a big role for you guys. And I love that you've shared that with others, and hopefully more people start doing likewise, because I can't tell you how many people I've heard just complain about how difficult it is to get the budget, even if they wanted to, and even getting business owners to kind of appreciate. And I think that COVID and ransomware has been very helpful in a way to get people to open people's eyes up to the dangers, the how prevalent it is, how expensive it could be. And with AI, cyber crime is becoming so good and so prevalent and so costly that I think it's gotten to the point where people are now no longer thinking it's not going to happen to me. It's a matter of, okay, I'm nervous. What can we do? So I think that's the silver lining to all this bad stuff. And I bringing this right back full circle. I love that your use of the tabletop exercise, I think, is just so great to get people to see that and be the final, like, oh, we really do need to plan better, guys. We need to put things in place. So I can't commend you enough on that. I think that was brilliant. I think lots of people will really benefit from hearing this and doing likewise. Um, but before we go, I'd love to, if you have any final things you'd like to share, but I'd love for you to tell people where they can find out more about Inspire CIO and Central Florida CIO, and also you and Limbaugh.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, we talk about the tabletop just to kind of finish the cyber topic here. Another important piece is that phishing and cyber awareness. We do a lot of phishing tests. I won't say how many a week, but I'm testing folks over 10 times a week. And
Nice.
we have some pretty harsh disciplinary actions for folks who don't take training or folks who continuously, we call them bad clickers. You know,
Clickers. I like
we
that.
really take it serious, and that's from the
Good.
top down. We just went through a cybersecurity awareness week last week where our CEO is sending out messages to everyone because they're sick of hearing from me. So you know, it's a team effort, and I would say for anybody that is either a CIO or head of security or a CEO, COO, CFO, you name it, you know, it is not just on your CIO to get the message across. It starts from the top. So the more that people see that cybersecurity is part of the overall culture and safety, for us, safety is huge in our culture because of what we do, PPE and, you know, keeping us safe. Cyber is a part of safety for us. So I think it's a group effort to get that message across. Don't just rely on the one person leading security because they need support from a business acumen standpoint as well, getting that message across.
Well
Switching
said.
gears, you know, as far as please reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can connect. Please be advised if you are a vendor, I will try and respond back. I do have a lot of partners as well, so please be mindful if responses aren't quick. Just know that my inbox does get flooded for from marketing and sales. But Inspire CIO, you can go to inspirecio.com, Central Florida CIO.com, reach out to me and I can get you connected with our executive director. We have a membership chair. It's a great organization. It's very low cost. And that's just the cost is just to have events and keep the program running. It's a great way to connect with your peers. The motto of the chapter is in the Inspire CIO is the answer is in the room. And we mean
Love
that.
that.
The answer is always in the room. It may be in a virtual room, but it's in a room. And I think, you know, I've had a lot of questions and strategies looked at by my peers, not because anything was in it for them, but because they're giving back just like I am.
Love it. Uh, Christos, this was a phenomenal episode. I love everything you've shared with us. Thanks so much for coming on, and I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Matt, thank you for having me. Great and easy conversation, and I look forward to listening to more episodes.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the Cyber Business Podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.